Hello and welcome back to the Swim Brief, the best swimming podcast you can possibly listen to. I get to say things like that because I did a few podcasts during NCAAs with Brett Hawk, in which we both had to admit to each other that we never listened to each other's podcasts. But we rely on Nate Scholl, the swim nerd. Apparently, he does listen to both, so he'll just communicate back and forth. So
he's the glue that keeps swimming going. He's the guy behind the guy.
Yeah,
that is holding all of the United States swimming. I think because he's on every message board. I think, isn't he?
Right. So
He's
Nate,
out there.
Go ahead and tell Brett that I'm talking smack right here in the intro. Okay, you let him know, and then I can hide before he responds.
Yeah.
I'm joined by some guy named Eric who Joel and I just met recently, and we decided, what the heck, let's put him on the podcast because it'd be boring just the two of us.
Yeah, it would be.
What's up, Eric?
Not much. I am back in my apartment for almost 3 full days before I head back out on the road.
But why Nationals is still going? Weren't you there and then you left?
Yeah, I was. I didn't have to be there for the entire meet.
Okay.
So I was there the first essentially 2.5 days of the meet, and by that point, nobody either wants to talk to me because we've had the same conversation 3 or 4 times, or most of the emergencies have already been handled. So it wasn't
next.
Actually, I have a work strategy meeting. Our warehouse is located in the Nashville area, so we're headed out there for a few days. Just some positive movement here in the company as far as where we're going with new product in the next 2, 3, 4 years. So trying to get ahead of it here while we all have an opportunity. So good stuff.
And then there's 9 D3 or D2 jobs. So everybody's favorite candidate for every one of those jobs is also here on the podcast, Joel Rawlings.
High praise indeed. Thank you, Chris.
Joel, what about Centenary College? What do you think?
Where is that, by the way? It's an East Coast deal, isn't it?
I think it might be in Kentucky.
All right, there you go. Yeah, that's the one thing I've noticed about coaching is unfortunately you just can't move one into your backyard unless you're like SoCa or something like that.
Yeah. I actually spent yesterday looking at all those D2 and D3 openings because I just wanted to know where they were. So I should remember it, but I've already forgotten half of them. And some of them were in quite difficult to pronounce town names that I've definitely never heard of, that aren't near anything that I've ever heard of.
I think we're definitely cracking open all the jobs now. You got how many 9 Division I jobs too going open at once?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those deals where you're like, what's going on? I always wonder with some of these schools, you get those type of guys that are always looking to kind of move up the food chain. Everyone looks at Stanford as the final destination to go to, or Texas, or now Cal Berkeley. So they're all you got about 84 dudes all trying to kind of claw their way to the top of that. And so then when one of those links breaks, then everything else kind of goes. And then you got a bunch of other places where it's people are really pretty happy to be there. And then you get to be old like us, where we're I really don't want to keep moving around. I don't want to jump through hoops. I kind of like that kind of a job. Yeah. So, what do you think is going on? Why so many job openings? Is this, you're kind of a man of the swim world. What's going on? Why are there 18 all at once like this? Is it just a kind of Olympic cycle deal? Is it just all of a sudden, maybe it's just, how the US is basically well, it's time to move that coach out of here. You make you have a kind of a 2-year contract now instead of the usual 4 or 5-year contract kind of thing, where it's well, actually we always have month-to-month contracts with swim coaches, but I mean, usually at least you get a 2-year leash before AD realizes that you don't know what you're doing.
Right. Well, we're going to get to some of the specific job openings, and I do think there is some individual factors in all of them, but I also think we're basically going to get almost 2.5 years worth of job changes. So, because I just think, like, for instance, almost nobody wanted to change coaches in the offseason in 2020 because there was so much uncertainty about being able to move around the country. And a lot of that hadn't resolved itself. There was certainly some shifting last offseason period, but nothing similar. It was also probably delayed by the fact that the Olympics got delayed another year. So we have, like, that post-Olympic year, which is sort of a big year for movement. And then you have sort of pent up demand, athletic directors who've been sitting on their hands, who probably wanted to do this 1 or 2 years ago, but just didn't feel good about their ability to be able to get a good candidate in to, because it's one thing to just have it out for your swim coach, but nominally you would want to have some sort of plan for replacing them. And, we'd love to trash ADs on this. So maybe many of them didn't have a plan or have a very foolish plan. And we like to trash them so that we can make sure that, you and I never work in college swimming again. Because, they listen to this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think it's your microphone that's dragging through the trash, by the way, that's making all that background noise. Not mine this time. But what I look at this kind of like when I take my kid to the zoo and you hear the Ferris, you hear the merry-go-round music. You're like, okay, there's a merry-go-round nearby, and your kid's getting all antsy about it. It's like, let's get to the merry-go-round. And then all of a sudden the music stops. And that would be February for coaching jobs. All of a sudden the music stops. Everyone can get on a seat now. Let's go. And then all of a sudden you're like, get the ticket, get on that chair, and then you're like, music starting again. It's April, May, June, and you're not on a seat. You're going to sit until March again. And so the music started, there's no way on that merry-go-round. So all these coaches kind of hanging around, but it does. It's like, as soon as one of the top jobs opens up, top job being like, in my wife's world, there's no such thing as a top coaching job, but in our world, there's a top job. So once that seat is filled, everyone else is like, man, I want that kid's spot. And so they're all jumping on the other horses that are below that top horse. And then there's the group of us sitting there going, damn, we didn't get on that ride, did we? No. What we're going to do? I don't know.
No.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to get to some of the more high profile ones later. We're going to take a look at both NCAA meets, even though Joel didn't watch any of it. So we're just going to let Joel, pretend to comment on something that's happened, or just ask a question that the audience would probably like us to answer, but he'll just ask it.
But it's a swim brief. It's not a answering question. That wasn't in the podcast.
Swim
you guys
answers.
Swim answers. Keep moving on to that podcast. This is brief.
I want to talk about Maggie Mcneil, who will be doing her 5th year eligibility at University of Cal Berkeley. We should discuss too the Olympic trials moving to Indianapolis, especially get Eric's thoughts as a loyal Nebraskan. He's in an emotional, fragile place once again. I want to spend 30 seconds talking about ISL season being canceled, but no longer. And then of course, as I said, we'll finish with those top job openings. But let's get to the NCAA meets first. We last recorded midway through the women's NCAA meet. So I wanted to give you guys each a chance to offer your final opinions on the women's NCAA meet. Again, Joel, because you didn't watch, I'm going to go to Eric first and let him give us a reaction.
Oh, the meet finished just about what we all expected in terms of speed. Hard to get into finals, the rest of the weekend, seeing the women break a lot of records. I think when we talked about that swim poll, as far as how many US Open records are going to be broken between the two meets, and too many people had no idea what was going on as far as swimming is concerned. And to see that meet alone reach the threshold of 5+ was no surprise to any of us. I think the biggest thing that we saw was that Virginia continued to just crush in every aspect of that meet, off the blocks, underwater, the last 5 yards. It just seemed like everything was really pointing towards them doing what they did this weekend. And anybody who had any legitimate shot at making this meet close couldn't falter. And not a lot of the teams necessarily did falter. They just didn't have as great a meet as they did, with your couple of exceptions. Tennessee went all in on SECs. Cal had a little bit of a flat meet, not a terrible meet, but just with how well that Alabama did, how well Florida did, and then obviously Virginia just answering the call of how good are they going to be this past week was fantastic. We saw Kate Douglas finish out the week the way that she started, which is just in dominant fashion. They're not losing a lot of senior points. So it just looks like this juggernaut is going to continue to run. And we did see the week finish out. The world did not end with all of the protests and everything like that. The earth is still rotating. So seems to be that things are all right. And I haven't really been, I stopped actually following both Swimming World and State of Swimming after that meet because it was just so much negativity and toxicity. And it seemed like the meet was really secondary to just being angry. And I'm not trying to discount some people's feelings and how they necessarily, what they believe or what they don't believe. But the reality is there was so much to celebrate that week. And too many people spent too much time not celebrating some of those amazing things that happened, all women involved. So, and then I'll let Joe jump in. I know I'll let Chris get into the men's meet, and then I can certainly respond. But I want to see Joel wiggle his way through both these meets.
Yeah, I don't really pay attention to much of the details. Like as soon as like a lot of my friends weren't at the meet, I'm like, well, what I like to watch is I'll just kind of catch clips on YouTube more than anything, and how homogenous a lot of the swimming has become. Like we've said with Virginia, how sharp they are and things, especially underwater. A friend of mine that coaches, he has a kid that swims there, and the first thing they started kind of grilling him on was about her underwaters. What it's like, and so that's definitely a thing since 2000 that's like either you can do underwaters or you can't, and if you can't, you're not going to be at that meet. And if you look back even 8-10 years ago, some of the clips of NCAA swimming, how different like breaststroke especially was. Now it's like you see everyone's a lot of the same. So I don't know if it's a YouTube thing where it's kind of going across and everyone's becoming a little more like it, or it's just these are the truths of swimming, especially short course yard swimming, of just the start, the turn, the breakout. That's everything. You're basically just jumping off walls either 3 times or 1 time, because it really has become the 50, and then you extend that to 100. And when it seemed like NCAA's used to be 200, extending down to 100, up to a 500, and doing a 400 IM. And so big thing I would like to see also is just how this is going to translate to long course meter swim. So obviously we've had so many US Open records broken. I want to see if that number matches again for long course meters, where all of a sudden, are those times converting out like, the traditional idea of like what is it, 8 seconds from yards to meters kind of a thing. Is it going to show up like that? Because again, those breakouts and underwaters are obviously hugely important, but they're going to be a lot more important when there's more walls. And so I'm interested in kind of seeing that. So the details of it, we all knew Virginia's going to run away with this. Douglas's meet though is amazing. I just want to see how it translates out to international level swimming and how it translates to long course meter swimming.
Yeah, I mean, my final thought, I think that's a great point, Joel, and not something I'd thought of. And I also would like to see, because I do think that a lot of the advances they have here are probably disproportionately beneficial to short course swimming. I think that Virginia and Todd DeSorbo, who is maybe not my favorite coach, but I have to give him all the praise in the world for obviously the incredible success. I feel that he's taken the NC State formula and turned it up to 11 in terms of having as a purposeful strategy, swimming well during the season as a way to swim fast at the end of the year. And I do think that is sort of the revolutionary thing. about all of this that has changed, that if you look back at maybe the NCAA champion from 10 years ago, the traditional structure was that, you know, you sort of limited the amount of times your swimmers would be close to their peak
Right.
speed throughout the year. And that was how you got good results at the end of the year. And it seemed to me, just from looking at their meet results, that the strategy was, we're going to swim close to peak in every competition we do. We're not going to have that many competitions, but when we have a competition, everybody's going to be basically almost end of the season ready, and we'll just get a little bit faster as the year goes on. And I do think it helped them in terms of people go like, oh, the double taper. Well, like if your whole strategy from the beginning was built around just getting a little bit better, it's not really a double taper in the way that you think about a double taper, where you go all in for something and then you try to go all in again. Like, I think that they had a purposeful strategy that had them, you know, doing as well as they could at the ACC meet, but because the NCAA meet was later, like literally just because it was later chronologically and the way that they trained, they were going to be faster at it. And I think it was obvious that it was really, really hard for other teams to keep up with that. And I wonder how much you're going to see change in their competition in order to try and adjust and sort of keep up with that, so that you're just not blown out of the water at the end by Virginia. And I think the other thing to look for going forward is, you know, Virginia is probably going to experience some years here where they get amazing recruiting classes and, you know, sort of start to look like a super team. How will the coaching staff there manage just the sheer mass of ego that comes with something like that? Because I think it broke Cal when Cal was looking to become a super team. I think it broke Stanford when Stanford was looking like they were going to be a super team. And if they can figure out to not have it break their team, then they're just going to rip off, you know, like an amazing run here, I think, coming up. But it's a big, big challenge. And that's sort of the next thing that's up for them. When I look at the men's meet, I think Cal was just incredible throughout, certainly not revolutionary in the same way. They got some good breaks from Texas. Not that Texas swam poorly at all. I think actually Texas swam well, but some years Texas just seems to pull so much out of don't want to say out of nowhere, but pull so much unexpected stuff. And they just had a little bit less unexpected stuff. And Cal was nearly flawless in the meet. If you just look swimmer to swimmer, how they performed, they had almost no misses. I would say like maybe Sean Grisham in the 500 free on the first day was a missed swim for them. But to bring your NCAA contending team to the meet and have that many, I think it's great. And I think certainly you have to give credit to Durden, of course. He's the head coach. And it's starting to look more and more impressive to me how often they've been in contention, because you can see, especially on the women's side, how hard it is to stay. You know, like remember when it just seemed like Georgia was going to stay in the top 2 or top 3 forever. I mean, Georgia was 14th or 15th this year in the women's meet. And so Durden is really working on a long period of being right there every year. I think certainly helped to push them over that they got Dave Marsh in there at the end. I think that you can see the effect in just having another person to manage at the meet. I think there's a whole podcast to be done here. Maybe I'll do it when I have a slow week, just around how different the coaching skill of coaching at a meet is from coaching practice. You know,
Yep.
The fact that coaching practice, you know, you can be so much better by being good at training, at designing training, at getting people to do hard training, teaching and all that stuff. And I think when you get up to this high level of competition, it becomes an emotional management job. You have to manage people's nerves leading up to the meet. You have to manage people's emotional reactions, highs and lows as they go through a meet, because, it's not just if they swim poorly. If they swim really well too, you have to sort of keep them stable and keep them from spinning so much that they're going to, not be able to gather themselves to finish out the whole weekend just as well as they started it. And I just think they did an excellent job of that, and that's why they won.
I think that you really touched on something that's really underlooked on a lot of this. Like going back to like with Virginia, the idea of swimming fast. We always thought about just kind of the muscular side of the sport, like training systems, training the muscle, but we kind of neglected the nervous system of being sharp and staying fast and thinking, well, we can't sustain that. But also part of that is just like the adrenal gland. Some of these meets become so, all encompassing, fired up, like the Cal Stanford meets, a very highly emotional meet. Usually, they're very much into beating, you go to conference, especially if you're winning conference for the first time, the amount of emotions going in there. Once you kind of tap into that adrenal system and it's drained, it doesn't just all of a sudden fill back up. I mean, it's a lot easier to again, get your glycogen levels going again than it is your adrenaline levels again. And that's part of what, again, when Virginia kind of now rolls in, where their idea no longer is, hey, let's try to win this. Like, let's sustain this. Let's do what we're supposed to do. When everyone kind of comes in a little more calm. I'm not saying, like they just rolled out of bed, but I'm saying a little calmer than they were, where you don't have that tension going on. And then what you're saying with that makes a lot of sense too, as far as like, what Durden is doing, and with Marsh, when you're a practice coach versus the meet coach, the kids who are in a practice, they don't see you half the time, 90% of the time, they're like right. For half seconds, but at a meet, they see you a lot. And so I think a lot of times they pick up, and they look over and they see, someone that they trust, like they've been there, they've done this, I have absolute confidence in this, then whatever nerves they've got going on inside them, like, coach will be able to handle this. And you've got, again, two guys that have been there so many times before and won so many times before. It's like, well, if he's not nervous, I'm not. It's like being on a plane, Nelson, you get that turbulence drop. First thing you do is like, is everyone on the plane kind of like calm, or are they still serving drinks? Okay, we're cool. All right.
Yeah.
If they're looking for seat belts and writing like quick text, I'm like, oh, I don't know about this little drop going into Vegas. Yeah. So I think that's a big part of it is again, just how much adrenaline you have, especially in meets that are this long. You're going out of like the SECs or the ACC meet, and then also you're going into NCAAs. It's like 16 days of all out swimming, and not just, again, the physiological component, but emotional component, like you just mentioned.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a good wrap on the NCAA meets.
What about Eric? Eric is.
Oh, Eric wanted us to come back to him. I forgot. Oh man.
Eric is our stats man.
Stats man, yeah. No, it was, I mean, to all those points, it just really briefly, when you talked about Virginia swimming fast year round, it's like, gone are the days of the old 2 times. Like, just, it makes sense to just cycle your weeks, cycle your season around your dual meets and around those opportunities to race, because you're building an athlete's confidence. NCAA's doesn't happen unless they're very intentional about the way that they're training and the way that they're cycling athletes. If they're not going to go big meet December, big meet March, or just big meet, big meet in March, just every single time and we only see what we see at the meets, Todd's jumping around, yelling and screaming, the whole entire squad is just up and down. So you do see that, but we don't really get to see too much of the behind, like how are they laying this foundation in September? What are they talking about as far as building the confidence within the athletes? And then as they go into dual meets, what are the conversations like, where you're just trying to be sharp, all these different places and positions, and they've got to be. And he did allude to it in a couple of conversations where there is autonomy, there is some input. He's relying on these athletes to have something to say about what's going on, because they know themselves better than anybody, and giving these young adults that opportunity is paying huge rewards, because they not that they were emotionless. There certainly was a lot of emotion, but they had this aura about them that what was happening was expected. Nothing was really surprising them. Maybe goal times were achieved that they went a little faster than maybe the goal timers. They were certainly happy about the way things were going, but at no point did I feel like this team was ever just surprised. Like, of course this was happening. We've done all this work for it. Here it is. We're going to do it again. As far as the men's meet goes, it is, they got, Chase's, I've met Chase on the Cal staff, and he's a fantastic young man and doing a lot of great stuff there. And from what I know, family situation is good with the young. He was on paternity leave, and everything seems to be going well there. But if there's ever a person, as far as we could tell, that's going to be thrown into the mix at the last minute to try to keep things going and keep things stable, or in the case of like Carolyn Joyce, save somebody's march to the Olympic team, it's going to be Dave Marsh, because there's just something about his aura on deck, and there's a calmness to him, and there's that experience that you talk about, to where I wouldn't be nervous if he was my coach and he just comes up to you and, the very sage-like advice and just very chill about things. He doesn't get super up or super down. And, Dave Durden's got full of energy, but he also has the ability to just equalize and get back to where it needs to be. So yeah, a lot of amazing things to see on that side of the swimming aspect. The men's meet, I got to talk to the guy that qualified for SMU just the other day, and just talking to him about his experience and just realizing, wow, I made this meet. I kind of belong here. And he talked about all the other people that he had always read about in psych sheets and results, and then seeing them in person. And the one thing that we kind of talked about was Leon Marchand, and he's a normal shaped human being. So anybody out there that is worried about having to be 6'7" Kieran Smith or a Mac Reavers, he is a freshman, much like Anthony Irvin was a freshman when he won 1500 free. I was at that meet when Anthony was there, and I walked past him totally unassuming looking as far as physically, but just steel, like just seeing, he said there's a much different person behind the blocks than he was just kind of around. You could tell he knew what he was capable of, and he did not falter at all that week. And he kind of did the whole balance of Kate Douglas in the men's meet, and anchoring a relay at 40.9, all the while winning the 2 breast and being way up there at the 4 IM. He just got beat by somebody who swam the fastest 4 IM in short course history in Hugo Gonzalez. So it was really interesting to see some of those fantastic swims. And I know Chris is probably not going to like this, but I am a little concerned about Carson Foster. I was a little bit negative in the text. I wasn't being as thorough in my language as I should have. I don't think he swam poorly. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Texas had a terrible meet. Like you said, they needed to have an excellent meet. They didn't get the points that they needed from diving to equalize just how good of a meet Cal had. But the reality is, between trials and between this meet this last year, he's been very good at prelims, but he's not been as sharp as he needs to be in finals. So I don't hate him. All right, Chris, I have nothing against him. He's a fantastic kid. He's arguably one of the most versatile swimmers in the world. I just hope that he has the world trials that he needs to have in order to get over this hump, because USA Swimming and he specifically doesn't need to post the #1 400 IM time at a sectional meet in July. He wants to make a world's team, and I hope he can get it done here and then have a great world's meet. So it sets him up for 2024 and he reaches the goals that I know he has in front of him. But like I said, I'm hopeful that we can see that stuff.
I'd like to go back and put the timestamp on the moment when Eric called Chase a young man, just so that we know, like when the YouTube algorithm hits and we all start getting our AARP cards in the mail for being elderly and our 10% off of coffee at McDonald's. It's because of that one moment. So thanks, Eric. Thanks for you've entered the elderly with Chris and myself now. You've become a crotchety old man with the young man comment. Oh, that young man.
He's a fine young man from Ohio.
Those kids with their bell-bottom trousers and their Jimi Hendrix music.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly took objection to your text because actually you lumped the Foster brothers together, and Jake Foster had an amazing meet. Carson Foster was not absolutely as good as he could have been, right? Yeah. Based on what we've seen from him. I do think too, the 400 IM was a tough race. I was doing those podcasts with Brett, and of course I forgot that Brett had coached Hugo Gonzalez two colleges ago, or as he put it, I was a coach of the team that Hugo swam on, which I think is a very good way of explaining what Hugo Gonzalez is like to have on your team. And I was teasing him, I think, because we were making picks for events, and I do believe he picked Hugo to win that race. And I was like, he's just as likely to miss the final or show up with the wrong suit on as he did at Pac-12s. And he said, you're absolutely right. But you know what? He's by far the most talented swimmer I've ever seen. And so it's pretty high praise. It's pretty high praise because I think he's seen some fairly talented people in his days. Good ones. So part of what happened to Marchand and Carson Foster in that race was they ran into, a supremely talented person who actually maybe swam to their potential in one race.
3:32, man.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Speaking of supremely talented people, now I'm going to make my transition. Maggie Mcneil is going to Cal. She had a 5th year of eligibility. She's finished her undergrad, I think, at Michigan. She's going to go over to Cal and do some swimming. Joel, you're like me. You're a Cal homer. What do you think?
Oh, I am. I think it's great. I like this whole athlete empowerment thing. That's the other thing I always throw in the text. Like, why don't we talk about kind of like basketball? Because it seemed like to be the spearhead of athlete empowerment. But for them to be able to move like this, it's pretty cool. And pick up a graduate degree, at least a year into it. That's, again, I don't know what her actual intentions are. Maybe she just, wants to swim 1 year for Coach McKeever or something like that. But I think it's great. I think it's a cool opportunity for a team to get in. Obviously, a great swimmer and just have a kind of fresh blood in there, kind of like you see with companies like these, startup companies bringing in people from different corporations to get a lot of different ideas in versus like you only hire from within kind of a thing. It's nice kind of bringing some people in there a little bit different, have a different background, different view on things, but especially talent like that. I think it's a great move. And I like the idea that athletes have this extra year that they can kind of do this if they like to. I think it's fantastic.
It certainly makes the transfer. I mean, I think this combined with the good old transfer portal, which I will never stop envisioning, like one of those magical portals like Doctor Strange makes in the Marvel movies. And so when somebody's entering the transfer portal that, they put the ring on and do like this, and all of a sudden there's, they're transported to a different university. They've entered the transfer portal. I think it certainly adds excitement to that stuff. And
you always hear the coaches kind of like going on about how like, well, they're just going to leave at the second there's adversity. It's like, I think maybe the kids that really don't really care if they're on your team or not because they're not the ones really performing are the ones that leave during adversity. I think it kind of puts a lot of coaches a little bit like on watch where, it used to be, I know one coach in the Big Ten that was they referred to him as recruiter and then the coach's name versus coach and his name because they're like, it was two separate people. You got to keep on recruiting your own kids now and basically kind of fulfilling what you promised them in on the cycle. So taking the athlete side, I think it's great. I think there's a lot of people like, oh, they're just going to leave. As soon as it gets hard, they're leaving. Like, no, they won't. Not at all. I think I think when all of a sudden it gets to be a point where like, this is BS, I'm out of here. You know, like think back, we're going to talk about the Utah job at some point. Remember like a few years back, the stuff you're getting on swim swam with kids swimming with bags underwater, you know, on their head. Yeah. Transfer portal, just like you said, Dr. Strange, open that little window. I'm jumping through and I don't care where I'm landed. I'm just not swimming underwater with a bag on my head again. That's all I know.
Also, if I was a world-class swimmer and I wanted to take the easy route, I would definitely not transfer to swim with Terry McKeever. That would be one of the last things I would do.
And I'd want to know how you became a world-class swimmer to begin with, taking the easy route. You know, I think too many coaches like bag on the idea that athletes are just going to look for an easy situation to go to. I think this is a great situation to jump to. And I think it's just wonderful for the athletes in general to have a little more transparency and a little more opportunity available to them.
Eric, you got Maggie Mcneil thoughts?
I do. I was actually trying to figure out what her major was, because I just find it interesting, because if you're going to transfer from a place like Michigan and go for a grad degree, a place like Cal is, you know, at the worst, a lateral move. So she's certainly stepping up and going that way. But I think one of the other things too is, like you said, it's an opportunity to swim with McKeever. You know, she's certainly probably been around her. There had to have been some kind of interaction on an international stage. You know, Terry is a very friendly person. Approach her, say hi, you know, just, you know, that kind of normal, nice human being stuff. I think one of the other things too, that maybe she was underclared as far as a major goes based on her profile on Michigan. So go any number of directions with an undeclared major. But I think maybe there's something else here too, is that obviously she's spent a good amount of time there at Michigan. Part of it was during COVID, which can be a bit stressful. It was stressful for everybody. So, you know, it's certainly not that she had a bad experience. It's just like, it's time. It's time to try to do something else. And you don't need to spend your entire career with one coach, because not everybody functions like that. And I think one thing that certainly can be good here, and I don't know how necessarily how strict it might be on the women's side, but by transferring to Cal, she's opened this window here to be in Cal as a pro. So It's always been, if you'll go to Cal, you could be in Cal pro group. If not, best of luck. So this is an opportunity to work towards that grad degree, swim for Terry McKeever, and live in Berkeley. You know, it maybe it lines
that
up
part.
Yeah, I mean that area certainly can line up with where she's at personally, you know, politically, you know, philosophically, whatever it is. But then it gives her a chance to be like, this is the place that I want to be going into 2024. And, you know, assuming the COVID thing kind of continues to slowly dwindle down, if I have a choice to swim in certain places in January and February, Ann Arbor versus Berkeley is not really much of a choice or a difficult decision at that point. So yeah, there's a lot there. It's certainly a positive opportunity. And like I said, if she was going to try to take the easy route, it sure as a heck wouldn't have been under Terry McKeever's watch for any amount of time. So,
and theoretically, yes, Eric, she's going to be going there and hopefully training up to defending her Olympic title in 2024. In other 2024 news, this past weekend, it came out, it was first in the Indy Star, that the Olympic trials, which for the last, four renditions have been in Omaha, Nebraska. And then prior to that, they were in Long Beach. And then for seemingly forever, were in Indianapolis, are now returning to Indianapolis. However, rather than downscaling to the 2,000 seat IUPUI, okay, yes. Oh, we're going to get to that, Eric. Great. Downscaling to the IUPUI 2,000 seat natatorium that everybody loves so much, including myself, we will be continuing the temporary pool in a pro sports venue setup. But this time, apparently, the plan is to upgrade to Lucas Oil Stadium, where the Colts play in Indianapolis, and have seating for 30 to 35,000 people. And if they fill it, which is a big task, because I think they've filled whatever the place in Omaha is now called. Last time I checked, it was the Quest Center, but I think it's maybe had another name change since then. A new corporate sponsorship. Was a less than half of 35,000 in terms of total seating. But if they did that, it would be the most attended swim meet ever. And certainly, I just going to sort of roll with some of my thoughts about this. I think this is a wonderful upgrade for Olympic trials. I have always talked on here about how I think Omaha has been a great host for Olympic trials. I think that the setup in the pool has been excellent. I think that Omaha has a nice area around the pool for people that are traveling there to explore. I think a lot of the hotel stuff that I've heard a few grumblings about has always been a little bit overblown. The airport was incredibly convenient, something like 3 miles from the pool. But I think you get a lot of what's great about Omaha, and just even better with the setup in Indianapolis. You have a centrally located meet in the United States, so it's not going to take very long for anybody to get there. The Indianapolis airport is probably one of my favorite sort of mid-sized American airports, very modern, very efficient to get through. You have a city that is used to holding large-scale conventions and large-scale events. I think I read somewhere there's going to be something like 7,000 hotel rooms that are walking distance from this meet, which is just blows your mind, right? And if you expand to a 20-minute driving radius, it's something like 30,000 hotel rooms. So it's going to be a city that can easily accommodate a large volume of people coming in for an event like this. And the things I'm seeing already about the setup just look outstanding. And it's got me really excited about 2024 Olympic trials. And I can see why USA Swimming was excited to trumpet this news as well. Joel, what do you think about trials in Indy?
I like the move also. I thought, like you said, I thought Omaha did a great job. I mean, they really brought a lot of pageantry that did well. But I like the idea, like you said, again, central time zone, where again, people are maybe like 1 or 2 hours off their schedule, versus if you start moving it around to the coast and you have to start to plan for that. Again, like just as a coach, remember just going to trials, just again, you got enough logistical things going on in your head. And so when everything is a little more calm like that, where you can get a hotel room, it's not going to be that far to the pool, that if all of a sudden the van breaks down, it's still, you're going to be able to get there because it's not that far of a walk or something like that. So every kind of logistical thing that would pop up, it seems like Indy's able to take care of. I thought Omaha again did a nice job as well. I think one of the things that also is nice is just, Indianapolis is trying to paint itself as kind of that amateur sports kind of capital in a sense. Like Budapest is obviously the capital of swimming, but as far as the United States capital of amateur sports, I think it would be like Indy. But I think anywhere that you have something like swimming, it's nice where the town would almost, not that Indy's going to stop because the meets are, but it's a little more exciting. It's in town. Like in New York, you could have the Super Bowl there. People might not even know it.
Right.
It's like they got enough stuff going on. When there's places, again, all due respect to Omaha, Indy, and stuff like that, when there's not much else going on, it's like, it gets a little more special. And also, it's not like you're fighting for hotel rooms as much. You're fighting other swim parents, but not, again, all these other things that are coming into town. So I think it's a great move. It's a great facility. It's got a nice history to it, obviously. And I like that aspect of the sport of swimming, when you can kind of bring in the history. Like I remember, the first time going to trials, you see all the past Olympians come back, it becomes like an alumni meet, in a sense, where they get to come back. And then when they come back to a pool that they swam in, I think it's special for them. You see the names on the wall and the banners. I think it's pretty cool. But obviously no disrespect, like you said, to Omaha, I thought they did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there. IUPUI could also be there as a, I think one of the issues some people have had in Omaha too is when they can't get access to the pool at the meet location, trying to find another place to swim. And if you have IUPUI available for some of that stuff as well, that's sort of right down the road. Just this is sort of the options as you go. But the one thing we have to hope for, as I'm thinking about all of this, is you have to hope as a swimming fan that the Pacers continue to suck between now and then, because the one thing we don't want is
about that.
yeah, okay, okay. I'm not going to spoil it. Eric, go ahead with your thoughts.
It's good.
You're locked in on that. That's okay. There's no breaking that streak for a long time.
They're out of the playoffs right now. So
I know, but in 2 years, Eric, I don't know. Do you think they might get it turned around and be working into June?
But you're looking at being in the NBA in the end of June. I mean, it's going to take a bit of growing on their side. They do seem to be making some kind of splashes in free agency here or there, but they still haven't been able to sort it out.
That's going to be like a conference finals, right? If they're still playing in late June.
Yeah, you're looking at being one of the top 4 teams in the NBA if you're playing in the end of June. Just basically an echo of everything that you both have said. I like Omaha as the host. If it was there again, will I complain? No. But do I think Indy is better equipped to be able to handle this meet and where USA Swimming is trying to take it? Absolutely. I wouldn't want to have this meet anywhere else in the country right now when it comes to what potential lies there. Why would you want to go anywhere else? I remember being back in the swim coaches AD exchange, and there was some knucklehead in there talking about how we need to have trials in Vegas. Like, do you want to be in Nevada in June, walking around trying to make it to a swim meet? Or do you want to be in Indianapolis in June, where the average high is somewhere in the upper 70s to low 80s, and the humidity isn't too bad, and it gets cool in the evening, and you have walkability for everything, and you don't have to worry about, if you're worried about what your kids might be exposed to in Las Vegas, after the sun goes down.
Plus, with all the gambling in Vegas, obviously you'd be afraid that, all the money that goes down on the 400 IM and the 2 fly, usually you'd be afraid that someone might throw a race for $50 or something like that. Yeah. you can't have that temptation. You're right.
But I'm thinking, and then you brought up an interesting point about being able to train places. Carmel Swim Club is not too far that way. Fishers High School has got a natatorium. There are so many different opportunities for people to get there. There's going to be a lot of club meets that are going to be prelims finals that week before, probably in that area now that they know. So teams are going to be able to come in and bring in a squad to swim at a meet and then roll into that meet. There was one meet in Lincoln, Nebraska that was happening the week before, and it was an outdoor meet. And a handful of teams would come in and then go up north. Now there's so many more opportunities for teams to come into a hub. So I would be, given the location, given the number of seats that are going to be available and the number of pools and meet opportunities that are there, I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to fill that venue, certainly for finals. I don't have any doubt in my mind that having that meet in a very large LSC, Indiana swimming is huge, and it is well run, and it is fast. Illinois is 2 or 3 hour drive away. Ohio is also really close. Michigan is strong. There are so many club swimmers that are so close to that meet that they will sell out those tickets. And just, and then having what experience I do in terms of being a meet host and looking at what the space of a football stadium has to offer for athlete engagement and the ability to access bathrooms really easily and have so many different things for those athletes and the athletes coming to watch. And on-site parking is not going to be an issue. Not that there was a huge issue in Omaha, but you're still contending with a much smaller space. There's a football stadium's worth of parking at that place, which also excites the Wisconsinite in me, Joel, when it comes to tailgating. This could be a swim meet where they will be tailgating before these races. And unfortunately, if I'm there, I will probably be working and I won't be able to partake. but it is the Midwest. There will be tailgating. It will possibly be the most awesome sight in swimming in the United States. I'm so excited for that.
I'm on board with what you're saying about Indiana swimming. That place has it squared away as far as like pools, club swimming, et cetera, like that. But when it comes to being part of the Midwest, I don't put it into the beer culture of Wisconsin. That place, when I get out and I hit the bathroom or something like that off the highway, all of a sudden I'm like, am I in the South? Why are they talking like this? What? It might be in the middle. It just doesn't seem like it's fine. Midwest. But so yeah, I think yeah. Again, they're squared away. They got 50-meter pools everywhere. I mean, geez, they got JV teams running like out of just amazing pools, and they've got it going on. But I'm not going to be tailgating in Indiana anytime soon.
Okay, well, really great to crush my hopes. I was hoping to come along, and then Eric says he's going to be busy working.
Remember, listeners, all 7 of you, when Joel earlier talked about not being bothered and being old and crotchety, like this is a prime example of where Joel is in his life, where he has the opportunity to grill out a drink before he goes into a swim meet, and he's opting not to. He's just going to lie on his couch with his Metamucil and his fiber pills, and he's just going to relax on his couch and not watch the swim meet.
No, I've always been like that. Even when I was young, I just, just text me, tell me the cool stuff you're doing. I'll live vicariously, but I'm not living vicariously through anyone hanging out in the parking lot in Indianapolis. That's all I got to say. I'll be excited about the meet though. Yeah,
I think it'll be great. And the only thing I worry about with Joel's initial comment is, doesn't Indiana do weird stuff with its time zone? Like, sometimes they're on Central. Are they on Central
they're
in
just
June?
Not following. They just decide they're not going to follow that rule, as well as like
a
lot of other rules of etiquette and engagement and things like that. But as far as swimming goes, they're down
sometimes
tight.
They're on Eastern time. It depends. I just don't know what time of year. I guess it's when everybody else falls back. Sorry. When everybody else springs forward, it'll be in June. So they'll still be on Central time.
It's assuming in 2024 we haven't converted, because right now,
I know it's in Congress.
There's one of the few things that there's bipartisan support for is getting rid of these changes in time. So by then it'll just be Eastern time zone or whatever it is they decide in that moment. They can carve themselves into Central time zone if they want, but
Eastern bias. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna save. Maybe we're gonna even punt the ISL stuff to the bonus when we also talk about Will Smith. So let's get to these job openings, and instead of sitting here doing the thing where we make a bunch of completely uneducated guesses as to who might get these jobs, I actually think what would be more interesting for us to talk about is what we think about these opportunities. Like, what are the challenges, for instance, of taking over Illinois, taking over Notre Dame, taking over Pitt, and now Utah? Because I think, it's one thing to just go like, well, I think these lists are basically like, who do you know and who do you like? And then you put them on a list, you're liked and known by enough people that they go like, hey, he should be, such and such a coach. When in reality, it's not necessarily about how good you are, but a lot of it is about how well you fit the situation and understand the situation. And I feel like we maybe have a little bit more of insight in regards to the things. So let's just take them one by one, and I guess I'll try to do them in order that they came out. So if we go back a couple of weeks, Sue Nowitzki retired at Illinois. We had a lot of conversation back and forth. This was one due to my coastal elite background. I really just couldn't understand Illinois at all. So I was like peppering you guys with questions about Illinois. And now I'm kind of understanding that certainly a lot of people in the Midwest have always seen this as an underperforming program because it has a lot of desirability in terms of kids in the Midwest wanting to go there, feeling that it's prestigious academically to go there. That especially as a single gender program, there's nothing really facility wise that's holding them back. So I'll go to you, Eric, first, as a former Big Ten athlete. Like, what do you think that the challenge is at Illinois?
The person's desire to really go after it. You look at the facility, they have a 50-meter tank. So you have to check that off. I guess weather could be a thing, but, Michigan is performing pretty consistently in a more northern location. So that certainly can't be it. Illinois is not a terrible place academically. Indiana certainly has had their fair share of success. So it can't be because of location, and it can't be because of facility. It's just got to be a matter of who's in place and what they're willing to do. So I don't know anything about the staff. I don't know anything about the head coach. I have no problems with her or them as a person. But the reality is you have far more there for your resources than some, and yet you consistently are in the bottom of the Big Ten. And I mean, I guess the only thing that could really hold this program back from improving is a lateral move in terms of hire. That really would be it. Somebody being a head coach, the opportunity to coach a single gender is going to be far easier than trying to do a combined program at the Division I Big Ten level. I mean, it's just it's a numbers game. So
Joel doesn't agree.
I think it's actually kind of harder. I think a lot of times, I think you're right as far as having 18 athletes is a lot easier to deal with than 40. But I think a lot of the people that I've seen when I was recruiting, where they liked swimming in a combined program, because a lot of them came from clubs where there was combined, and I don't know why it is, but they would just they kind of liked having a combined program where men and women were together in that opportunity. And also this thing is I always wonder like when I coached Division III, I remember a Division I coach like, man, Division III, that's the way to go. Everything's so fair. No one has scholarships, so you just kind of, you're like, you got no idea, do you? And it's the same at Division I also, where again, I don't know what the pitfalls are of this job, again, as far as budget or things like that. But I think you're absolutely right, Eric. I think it's, Illinois is really good swimming LSC. There's a lot of kids out of Wisconsin that would go there. I think there's a lot of kids out of Indiana who would go there. But you wonder about, as far as the coach that's willing to go there. I remember, like, I talked to, here's the name drop. I talked to Boomer back in the 90s, and when he was working at Stanford. And he said the thing is about Stanford is people always think about it what it is right now, and that was with Skip Kenny and things like that. He's like, to be honest, like, it was just a pool, and it was the force of will of this coach to make it great. He just was like determined. He's like, this is what we're going to do. And he had an administration who's like, all right, do it. And so now, again, you're going to bring in a coach, and are you going to beat Michigan? Not anytime soon. Are you going to beat Minnesota? Not anytime soon. Wisconsin, they're on the climb now too. Indiana, Ohio, it's again, you're kind of in the middle. And so I look at those kind of jobs as you're going to get a coach that's going to try to use that job to get another job. And I think the ones that get the best results seem to be the ones that have, the diehard kind of, like, they came from Illinois, they wanted to do well, and they're going to stay there. But you're absolutely right. I think it's got a lot going for it with the 50 meters. It's got, it's a good school. It's in the Big Ten, which is a good conference. Problem is it's cold. Like you said before, it's like, you want to hang out in Michigan or you want to hang out at Cal in February. It's like, it's another thing when you're hanging out in February and you're winning. It's another thing when you're hanging out in February and you're like, dang, we're going to get on a bus for 6 hours and go get our butts kicked again. Because that's what it's going to take for a little while. But I think you're absolutely right, Eric. I think the only thing I had different was I think it might be, it depends on the athlete. But I know a lot of athletes, a lot of female swimmers like the idea of competing with guys. You look at like what we said with Ledecky.
Yeah, in terms of getting recruits to want to be there, I guess I was looking at it from a coach's standpoint.
Logistics, you're absolutely right.
Management. Yeah. No, athletes by far. Yeah, there are so many benefits for a women's team and a men's team to be able to compete in a combined program. But yeah, I think I agree. It's got to be a homer, somebody who's going to want to be in Illinois for the long haul, and hopefully whoever it is has the kind of energy and enthusiasm to be able to get that athletic department to go a bit more all in on that program. So maybe the head coach was trying to make, diamonds out of turds, and the athletic department really wasn't giving them the kind of support, or maybe it was just the energy that they gave, or whatever it is. It's just, hopefully that they have the backing from the department to go with the facility and the access to Illinois swimming, Indiana swimming, Michigan swimming, and some of those Wisconsin recruits. So
yeah,
when we get the merch link up and running and I get our t-shirt sales going, Eric, I would like Eric's diamonds out of turds. That's my pitch for the t-shirts that we should be selling, and maybe the hats.
Not even cold turds.
Yeah, right. Making the bright red, the yellow print, like making diamonds into turds great again. It's kind of it doesn't really flow, but we'll brainstorm later. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think for Illinois, I think you guys have pointed to this a little bit. Whoever takes over I think there's some institutional landmines waiting for them. I just can't imagine looking at this and the fact that Nowitzki, again, I have nothing against her personally. I'm just speaking objectively about results. She was there for 19 years and they were never competitive. They're basically at the bottom of the Big Ten that entire time. So that tells me that there's a lot of other people who are at best apathetic about whether this swim program does well at all. And you need more than just a coach and an assistant coach behind a program for it to do really, really well, especially in a competitive Division I, power conference. I do think you need more than that. And so you're going to have to rally some people within that school who have not previously been rallied to caring about whether the swim program is successful to your side. I think you're going to have somebody with some humility who can weather the storm of getting to Illinois and getting out to do the work on the ground in terms of recruiting. I was talking to a friend of mine that coaches at a school, was, wanting to get out in the local area and do some more recruiting. And his head coach said, well, none of the coaches around here like me. So I don't do local recruiting. And I'm thinking, imagine if your swimmers had that attitude, right? Imagine if your swimmers said, I'm not going to try very hard at practice today because I'm not that good, so I'll just quit. And I think you're going to have that sort of determination in recruiting, because I know from experience, having been at Georgia Tech, and we started to try and get out and visit local Georgia coaches. Many of them were pretty cold to me the first time I visited them. They were angry that they felt like they had been overlooked. They felt like there had been zero outreach. And that was what they told me on the first time that I saw them. And I could have gone just wow, these guys are assholes. And I should probably just stay, and try to get kids from Latvia or Turkey or whatever, and just, screw this. But I found that if you kept showing up and you just kept your head down and you had genuine interest in what was going on, that those things thawed over time. And I think because they've been so bad for so long, I can imagine that they're going to encounter a lot of that in the local area. But by nature of that, I mean, in-state recruiting should be an advantage for you. And some states are better to live in than others. And I just look at the fact that they're getting beat by Rutgers. They're getting beat by Iowa. They're getting beat by Nebraska. None of those states have a in-state recruiting advantage over Illinois.
No. And I think one of the things you said, though, as far as I swam at a place where, again, when you walk on campus, you knew the administration really didn't care if swimming was there or not. You were there to balance something else out, whether it's the GPA or gender equity. But when you think about the conference or the Big Ten, you said something that was really made sense. Was obviously people were apathetic if, you can stay in the bottom forever and nothing really changed. SEC, you have a bad game. You come into work on Monday and your key card's not working anymore. You got, how did this happen? I'm already out the door.
Right.
Big Ten, it's I won't be nice. I'll say what I'm thinking right here. Name like 5 teams that really do care about swimming in the Big Ten. And you got Michigan, obviously. Wisconsin's doing well. Minnesota's doing well.
All right. Minnesota's not even doing that well team-wise, to be honest.
Ohio State. Ohio State,
Indiana. They seem at least to care about. Let's put the bar at care. Not even like really all in, like you said, like all in. Just care.
Yeah.
Below that line, I would say not just apathetic. I would say like that it's like Milton in Office Space, where they just haven't fixed the glitch of cutting all the other programs, because I don't think they care at all, and they just don't even realize that the payroll is still, those checks are still going out.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Iowa already tried to cancel. Rutgers did cancel. Illinois, they were down to 1 team. Michigan State, you've seen that pool.
Right.
There's not a lot of caring to build that pool. That looks like a bunch of swim coaches built that pool. Where you're just like, I don't know. Just put that
I
brick
swam
here.
in Nebraska. There's still lights in the ceiling that flickered like they did when I was there.
That's because it's the same light bulb. They're just like, well, if it hasn't burnt out yet, let's not pay for that. Exactly. Right. I mean, so that line of caring is a lot different than the SEC line of caring or the Pac-12 line of caring. But again, I think
maybe even the ACC line of caring, which
the Patriot League line of caring.
No. Don't you dare. Don't you dare drag the Patriot League into this, Joel. There's a lot of people who don't really care in the Patriot League.
I know the SUNY system cares more about swimming than the Big Ten.
That's just some WIAC jealousy there of the SUNY.
It is. You're right.
Just hating.
Okay. My bad. It's just hating.
This D3 grumbling right now. We're starting to lose some people.
That's right. Well, okay. So let's get this back on track.
Is like when I would go recruiting, I'd be like, I don't even have a Starbucks. How can you not recruit here? The same thing as what you're saying is you need administration, you need a population base, you need a facility. You have those 3 things, you got a chance.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of Pitt, seems like they fired John Hargis after 6 years. Pitt was essentially at the bottom of the ACC. Very few people regard Boston College as a legitimate ACC program, because you want to talk about some people who don't care about results. As I've brought up several times on this program, this is a college that built a brand new pool 2 years ago and actually made it with less water than their previous pool. They had an 8-lane, 25-yard pool with a diving well, and they downgraded to just an 8-lane, 25-yard pool with no diving well. So here you have a school that seems to be taking active steps to kneecap their ACC swimming and diving program, and that was who Pitt was ahead of. Eric, what do you think somebody taking over Pitt has to reckon with?
I was actually a recruit for Chuck way back in the day.
Look at Eric.
They were good, Eric. Weren't they good in those days?
They were really good back then. So, to go from that down to beating a school which, as you described, is the definition of apathy for its swim program, is a really large fall from grace. It's kind of, I guess, in the Illinois situation where the only place to go is up. I mean, you can't really go any further down at that point. And at that point, you're getting your program cut. So if there's going to be level 1 violations, that's really the only thing that's left for this program. They have the facility. Pittsburgh is an amazing city. It's certainly much different than it was, 23 years ago when I was a recruit there. I've had past swimmers recently within the last 5 years who are undergrads at Carnegie Mellon. So in the same city, and it's an amazing place to be right now. So there's a lot going for this program, and you have a facility. So yeah, I guess you got to have somebody who wants to work really hard to crack into the top again in combined program. Assuming they have some kind of resources, I haven't really looked into it, but as far as what their resources are exactly, but I don't know. It just kind of surprises me that it's just another situation where a coach came in on interview day. Like you said, there's two different coach types. There's a recruiting coach, and there's the coach that you see every day, and maybe there's some of them have a third, and it's when they interview. And he nailed the interview, and ever since then, it's been not a whole lot. So hopefully they can sift through that this time around, and they don't have to watch their team be at the bottom of that conference anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think to counterpoint a couple of your things, the city of Pittsburgh, I've lived in that area for a year, underrated, some of the worst weather in America. It is the second rainiest city in America to Seattle. Yes, Joel, it's rainier than Portland. And it's got the combination of being in the Northeast, so it gets even colder when it's rainier. And so, the appeal of walking through wet puddles for the majority of the year while you're studying class, I think that's definitely a challenge you have in recruiting. Especially maybe when you're walking through wet puddles up something called Cardiac Hill to get your dinner or breakfast after practice, which is something I learned about through SwimSwam this week. So there are some issues there. I do agree that especially the part of Pittsburgh that it's in is a really nice part of the city. It's a nice college environment. They do have a 50-meter pool. It's an older pool. Okay, so maybe it doesn't have all the flash and bang that like the teens want these days. Here I'm making my own appeal for AARP.
Yeah.
And I think they have a really tough challenge in the ACC because as Joel just said, and dismantled a bit of my Big Ten argument, I do think outside of Boston College and maybe a couple others, you've got so many schools that are trying pretty hard to be good at swimming. So it's actually going to be very, very tough to move up in that conference.
Mm-hmm.
Like you see, like a school like UNC that has such great history and such great infrastructure for everything. They're really struggling, for instance, when they are down in 6th or 7th or 8th. And that's where you probably would like to get to in the short term with a Pitt hire. And it's going to be really hard to beat them. It almost seems like they were hurt more than anything by the move to the ACC, that they got caught. The swim program's been caught in their basketball team trying to be in the top conference of their football program or whatever, and getting that TV revenue. And the old, like Eric, I think when you were going on a recruiting trip there, they were in the old Big East. That was a really good conference for them. That was really competitive. I think them and Notre Dame had some really good sort of back and forth in that time period. And just the psychology of like, they could have a great year, get a bunch of their kids to improve a lot better, get some great recruits for where they are as a team, and not move up at all in that conference. So I think that's going to be a really big challenge to whoever takes over there. You're going to have to find a way to measure progress that isn't necessarily immediately moving up in the conference, and find a way to get everybody to continue to sort of do the slog of improving in that context, because it's going to be really, really hard.
I think part of this too is again the reputation. You look at, like, as a dad, the reputation is really good. It's a nice place. But if I'm looking at a place to buy a house, for instance, I'm not going to be like, oh, how's that gentrifying area going? It's been 8 years developing. I really want to move there. You don't just all of a sudden try to wow a kid with, this is really an up and coming town.
Right.
Don't sleep on Pittsburgh. That's your sales pitch. Don't sleep on Pittsburgh. Let's see, you can either go to Virginia or you can go to Pitt. Yeah, because I think again with also the name is Pitt. I'm going to go from Los Angeles to Pitt. No one says, hey, by the way, what's really up and coming? Los Angeles. It's great. That's why people are going to go to Los Angeles. You have to sell like up and coming to places that people just ain't, they're not going. So I think really their recruiting strength is out of the Northeast, but you've been swimming in the Northeast and you're the number one swimmer in that area. That means you're a really good swimmer. And now I got a chance to not be cold. I'm taking that chance, and there's a lot of schools in the ACC that are ahead. Again, it's coaching in college is more about marketing and being a realtor than it is about coaching, I think. There I summed it up. That's the best way I can describe
And that's
it.
why
you got a lot more to sell.
Yeah, that's why so many ex-coaches go into real estate, obviously,
and insurance.
And insurance.
Yeah, you're used to being turned down by so many people. Like, yeah, what the hell? At least now I'm making six figures getting turned down.
All right. I'll go to Utah next. And I think Joel's going to have to drop out here in a minute.
So I have to drop off. Yeah.
Yeah. So just maybe, Eric, what do you think about Utah?
Hi, Joel.
Also, let me just jump in quick and I'll get
it.
out because I've been to the pool. It's a great pool. Again, it's I think it's a nice region to be in. It's as far as coaching lifestyle, it's a great place for a coaching lifestyle. You got mountains, you got a lot of things going on there. But again, it's like the LSC. There isn't anything. So you're going to draw out of Montana, not a strong LSC. You're going to draw out of Colorado, not a strong LSC. You basically have to do all of your recruiting elsewhere and convince people that come on into Utah. Sundays, everything's going to be wide open for you to play golf on, but good luck getting a good cup of coffee because we don't believe in caffeine.
Right.
Yeah. So I think I just talked myself out of the ability to apply for that job. So
yeah, there you
crossing this off. All right. Well, good talking to you guys. Thanks.
Hey, Joe.
See you.
I don't really disagree with what Joel has to say, other than Colorado's a step higher than what he gives credit for. There's some good swimming coming out of Colorado, but they got to really love to ski and they got to love snow. But again, it's one of those programs that we talked about with where Pitt is in the ACC, and not to say that the Utah's athletic department is apathetic. It's just cracking into that top half of that conference is not going to be easy. It's certainly not going to be easy when you have to compete with the weather of even UCLA or what Stanford has to offer or Cal. And then there's Arizona
or Arizona State.
Which is
those
on the
are the schools
too.
you have to beat.
Yeah. So if you want to get into the top four, you have to try to beat Cal, Stanford, Arizona, and Arizona State. Well, Arizona is in flux just as much as Utah is in terms of results, but those other three programs are certainly there. Arizona State has really been on a push these last few years, but Joel said it's a gorgeous facility. It's a certainly a beautiful place if you like. It's got pretty snow. It's not like Pittsburgh snow or Jersey snow or Wisconsin snow. It's
got nice snow.
There's some nice snow. It doesn't turn instantly black and disgusting and full of salt right away. But in any event, it's a hard conference to be on the bottom and try to work your way up. So it's somebody who's going to have to be super resilient and patient and get a couple of lucky breaks. It's going to take the person who's going to take over that program is going to have to come from a program where there is a lot of great things going. So it's a matter of, if you're an assistant at a hot program like Virginia, do you bring that name and some of that with you so you have an opportunity to get some kids to pique interest? Well, this coach was at Virginia and Virginia was doing so many great things. Are they able to bring some of that secret sauce from Virginia out to Utah, or are they able to do that with Pitt or Illinois or wherever else it's going to be? It just seems to be like a lot of these jobs that we're talking about are all stuck in kind of the same place of, we got a big hill to climb, and not just the one in Pittsburgh. So,
I think this is another wrong conference team. To me, Utah would be so much better served swimming wise. I know why they're in the Pac-12, for football. But swimming wise, I just think Utah would be so much better served being in a mid-major conference.
Yeah, like
to
the
me,
WAC.
yeah, they would be great in the WAC, you know, like UNLV is a great comp for them as a place to compete against. And I think it would be really motivating for them if they were in a conference like that where they could contend for a conference title year in, year out. So that's going to be a really hard thing. I just don't see ever Utah putting the same level of resources, or even sort of the more resources you'd probably have to put in at a place like Utah to beat out Arizona, Arizona State, UCLA, Stanford, or Cal. So a really tough situation. And I can see why Joe Spahn got 9 years, because, you know, somebody would say like, oh, well, you said Sue Nowitzki didn't move anything, and Joe Spahn basically kept Utah in the same position the whole way through. I think there was never a sense that he was doing poorly there, like that he actually had a number of really good years that just didn't move the needle at all in the Pac-12. I suspect he'll land on his feet at a mid-major program and go back to overachieving at one of those places. But it's just a really, really hard thing. And I think living in Utah for certain, and living in Salt Lake City has a limited appeal. I mean, it is beautiful, but you know, yes, as you say, like the lack of good coffee shops, the, you know, feeling that like it might be a fireable offense to be pictured in a bar having a drink, you know, like I think that probably does hurt things a little bit as people look at it.
Agree. And we kind of forgot about even the fact that they got to go against USC.
Oh, and USC. Yeah. I just forgot about all those schools. Okay. Notre Dame, you know, I think probably is the most appealing of these job openings, especially now that the news that you just flashed up on the screen, people who are listening still have no idea the breaking news that we got while this was happening. But we'll get to that in just a second. Notre Dame, I think, you know, has a little bit more history of competitive success, since moving over to the ACC. They've definitely had some people at the high end, especially on the men's side of that conference, and even some relatively recent high level women's success. So there have been some really good things happening there. Not necessarily the last couple of years have been a little rough. And I think they're going to look to stabilize the ship. Immensely appealing academically. Lots of people want to go there. We've got a girl on our club team was a freshman this year and dealing with all the challenges of being at Notre Dame in this particular year. But I would expect that out of all of these, that Notre Dame is probably going to get the first pick of anybody who might try to apply to all of them, because it just has the most going for it of any of these places.
Yeah, no, there is a bit of a name. It's interesting to see how the name itself plays on the swimming world versus the football world, you know, because there is so much of that storied tradition and the history in the school that itself. So some of those things obviously are selling points. Taking a kid to a game there is really in a lot of ways second to none. But it's going to take, and again, in a situation like this, it's going to take the right coach with the right energy and that desire to be Notre Dame, blue and gold, and just, you know, capitalize on that. They're in such a good location. We talked earlier about being able to pull fans for trials in terms of being able to pull talent from the Midwest. I mean, it's like I said, with academics is always been important, always will be important, and even more so in swimming when so many kids, it's like, what have you got to offer me? I know I'm not going to be a pro, you know, and a degree from Notre Dame and being a part of that inner circle once you graduate it's got a lot going for it. So being able to pull from Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, a lot of those, Ohio, a lot of those kinds of kids, you just got to be able to have what it takes to be able to bring them in. So you got to be able to recruit, you know, the fast kids who are going in for the kind of majors that are great at Notre Dame, and hopefully you have the kind of right pitch and the right background and coaching to be able to take that program forward. Like, it's just where you're coming from as a coaching candidate to be able to take all the things that Notre Dame has going for it and actually capitalize it. It's going to be an easier route for a place like Notre Dame versus in Illinois or Utah. There's some of those things that are already built in, and it's a fantastic situation, but still equally, there's going to be a lot of effort there to take what they've got and get it to that really next level in terms of cracking into more scoring at NCAAs. So.
Yeah. This one, I'll break my own rules and I'm going to make a guess. I think it'll end up being Rich Murphy of Tennessee. And
I think so.
Yes, I base that on him being an alum, Tennessee having some momentum from this year. And I think, Rich had a rough go of it in his first college head coaching position. That was at the University of Houston. And he's ready, I think, to get back on the horse and give it another shot. And that could be, just a forever job for him. He's a wonderful swim coach, and I'd be really excited for him if he gets it in the same way I was excited for Ryan Wakamerka to make that comeback to Auburn last offseason. So I'm going to I have one like lock prediction per year, I think, in the college ranks where I feel really confident that something's going to happen. And the only way I could not see that happening is if somehow Rich is just not interested. But I think if he's interested, it's a slam dunk for them. And that's what's going to end up happening. All right. You want to do the Lee Maurer news on the bonus part here? Or
let's go. Let's do that on the bonus footage along with the other things we were going to talk about.
Yeah, you guys got to listen for the breaking news, which you've probably already will have read by the time I get this podcast up. So listen for the bonus and see what's going on.